The controversy trailing the return of Ibrahim El-Zakzaky from India is far from over.
Well, the Shiite leader had been flown to India for medical treatment, but he returned after allegations and counter-allegations of misconduct and neglect from the federal government, as well as El-Zakzaky himself. While the federal government says Mr. El-Zakzaky refused to avail himself for examination, the Sheikh alleges that the Nigerian government and Indian authorities subjected him to inhumane treatment.
Mr. El-Zakzaky, since his return, has been making all sorts of claims.
Joining me now via Skype, Executive Director, Emergency and Risk Alert Initiative, Gbenro Olajuigbe. Public Affairs Analyst, Dr. Dokun Adedeji is here, this time in the studio. Good morning to you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us at this time on TVC Breakfast.
Morning, thank you.
Let me just move on. Let me get the initial analysis now from Gbenro Olajuigbe, who is joining us via Skype. With this allegations and counter-allegations so much, but which do you lean towards?
Well, I am tempted to believe the federal government, but because the relief granted El-Zakzaky was a court relief, and it must be complied with. So there was no reason for the bail carrying for somebody that is sick. It was absurd for somebody that had been taken out of the country because he was ill, diagnosed ill. I have no doubt about the fact that he was sick, or is sick rather. But then the expectation is that the management of the situation should be by the hospital that was strictly selected by him and sanctioned by the federal government, or agreed to by the federal government. It doesn't lie within the purview of El-Zakzaky to be thinking of who the doctor that will treat him will be. And one thing that we need to note is that the moment he was taken to that India, the moment he got to India, his concern was that people were not allowed to welcome him at the airport. For God's sake, he was a sick man. He was to be a patient in a particular and specific hospital. So the expectation is that he will comply or live within the relief that the court has granted.
All right.
This is without prejudice to his ill health.
Let me also ask further, Gbenro Olajuigbe. El-Zakzaky also said he was treated like a prisoner in India as against his detention conditions in Nigeria. That's an interesting twist now. What's your take?
I think we should contextualize this matter. The fact is that El-Rufai did not go to India as a totally free man.
Exactly.
He was granted a relief by court with specific instruction that DSS should follow him or security agents should accompany him for the visit or for the health concern he had. So he should not expect that he will be taken to a 5-star hotel. He was taken to hospital, which is fine by me. He was expected to be a patient in the hospital. It was also okay. But the fact is that he was not a totally free man, even though we still condemn his continual detention. The fact still remains that the relief was granted by court under specific conditions that needs to be adhered to. So I cannot blame the security agency for monitoring him and every other thing. And I was taken aback by his request that he wanted to stay in a 5-star hotel, but that was not in contemplation of the court relief order.
All right. Executive Director, Emergency and Risk Alert Initiative, Gbenro Olajuigbe, we appreciate your contributions on TVC Breakfast this morning. Let me turn to Dr. Dokun Adedeji here with me in the studio now. Talking about the question I asked your co-analyst just a while ago, talking about, he said he enjoyed greater freedoms in Nigeria even while he was in detention in the country than what he experienced in India. How does that strike you?
To be quite honest, I think a controversy is being generated where there should be none. What does it mean that he enjoyed better freedom here than in India? India has no detentive authority on him except to treat him. So they will afford him the opportunity of having a good medical treatment. And if he had gone to India with under certain conditions, they would not be relaxed because he's in India. Indian government at that time will be like surrogate nation to him to provide all the same detention abilities for God, but a bit in a hospital environment. Honestly, I think this El-Zakzaky matter, because of the level of cynicism in Nigeria, is being blown into dimensions that are purely not necessary.
Let me also ask you about the twist in the way Sheikh El-Zakzaky looks now. So the narrative now is he looks healthier than he left. So how do you interpret that medically?
You know, that's the problem we have in this country. When people commit offenses, they're okay. When they're detained, they become ill. When they begin to play games in the courts, I like to go for treatment, and then they become better without even any treatment. Obviously, this guy had been shown to us many times in a wheelchair. He can't see, he can't perceive anything, he can't walk. Suddenly he's standing and walking and expecting people to welcome him. I mean, look, it's just that Nigeria has gotten to a point in which there's total disbelief in the government, and then we don't even try. And I don't think we should do this to our country. I'm not saying people should be detained for a prolonged period of time, but the law permits a prolonged detention if you're a security risk.
And the law also, entitles accused now to medical treatment.
Absolutely.
The norm is you can't stand trial if you are dead. So playing this card now on health grounds is what courts are usually will always want to club. But that aside, there's also the issue of the medical supervision status, which the court gave the federal government in allowing its officers to accompany the El-Zakzakys. Now that is also a controversy now, because the accused is saying the government flouted or went in excess of this supervision.
How does it mean the government went in excess? You see, the thing is, there are conditions provided by the courts that if you're going, the following components of security people will go with you.
Let me even ask differently. This issue of the doctors that attended to him and not the doctors he eventually saw there, is there a legally binding code, so to speak, now on this access to my own doctors?
Look, honestly, I don't see a reason why that should be in contention. If you say the Nigerian medical provision cannot contain what you have, and then you are being sent to a superior hospital of your choice, and then has been communicated with, so why do you then want the person that couldn't treat you in Nigeria? Yes, they can be there, but they can't treat you. A Nigerian doctor cannot go to an Indian hospital and begin to treat a Nigerian patient. It is not within the medical ethos. So, you see, the thing, that's why I'm worried about the dimension in which these things are dragged. And I'm glad that you people are raising so that people can begin to have a final picture of what is happening.
I wonder, when El-Zakzaky talked about or accused the Indian government and even the U.S. government in involvement in this, I wonder how serious or flimsy that is to this whole issue.
That can be envisaged given the background of the religion, the crisis between U.S. and Iran, and at the same time, the possible influence of U.S. on India. But that is out of it. I don't think that is the reason why he abandoned his medical treatment approach. He ought to have afforded himself the opportunity of treating himself. I think he should less bother about what other nations are thinking when he's highly unhealthy, as confirmed by doctors, and he has graciously granted relief by court. His concern should basically be his own health and that of his wife. And I want to emphasize here, like I've said in other platforms, that he was taken there to be a patient and not to be king of India.
Oh. All right. The way you put it, not to be king of India. But let me bring it. Now, the point there is, as it is right now, what impact will this have on his ongoing case? Because it was part of his health. Well, could be the reason why he couldn't stand trial all the while. And he has gone and discharged himself, and he is back. How will this impact on the case, on the ongoing case in court?
Well, the opportunity of taking him out seems to be slim. But then, having said that, his adherents, his followers, has vowed to continue their protests by the way they felt that he was treated in India. So I think as that unfolds, we will begin to take note and observation of how it's going to turn out. But nevertheless, I will still ask the federal government. Of course, this thing started with the abuse of abuse of court order, which has earlier granted him bail before. That was not obeyed, or they were not obeyed, because there are several court orders granting El-Zakzaky bail. But then, having said that, we have crossed that bridge now. I think the federal government to initiate a reconciliatory forum between him and the El-Zakzaky group, led by El-Zakzaky himself. I think that will be good for anybody, every person in Nigeria. We don't deserve to have any outbreak of terror violence again in this country.
All right, Gbero Olajigbe, thank you so much for talking to us. Dr. Adediji, let me come to you on this now.
Right.
What kind of instance? Take us into the hospital now. Let us assume we're in the hospital, and I want to learn what, what all that is. Now, can a patient insist, when it comes to the rights of the patient and the authority of the hospital management, can the patient insist that it is this doctor that must be the one to be responsible for my treatment or no one else? How does it work in the hospital?
You know, what works in the hospital is, I mean, it depends on the state in which you are taking that.
Okay.
If, for instance, in a normal medical situation, you get seen by the doctor on duty. If there's a need for a specialist to come, the specialist comes in. But in this particular case, if you are going because you needed to see, they will have prepared. Because I heard that those doctors were his own pick, and the hospital was his pick. Mm-hmm. So if, let's assume the doctors were not even his own pick, but that is the hospital is chosen. It rests with the hospital to provide the adequate personnel that will deal with the situation. He can then insist that, oh, I want my own from somewhere to come to treat him. They can be there in observer status to see whether something is being done. Mm. But you cannot leave Nigeria and go to America and say, I have a Nigerian doctor who should come and see me in an American hospital.
We're even talking about within the said hospital in India, where he has certain doctors who work there. Mm. Can the patient insist that it is Dr. A in this hospital that must be the one to treat me or no one else?
Why should he? Because he doesn't know them. Okay. He knows the hospital.
What if there's a recommendation or a referral?
If that had happened, I mean, the hospital, they're the ones providing the service.
Okay.
They can then say, for the peculiarity of the situation, this is our best bet to treat you. Okay. But he can then say, I don't want that person. I want this person, because he doesn't know the capabilities and why the hospital has chosen the personnel. So I think it's playing to the gallery and then just trying to be funny to say, this is the person that I want in this particular hospital. You pick the hospital. We gave you the expertise that we have. You don't know them, so to speak. So how can you then say, I want this? If anything had happened, if they had done that and something had happened, what would then be the situation? I think this matter is just playing to the gallery.
All right. Now, before I let you go, what impact is it going to have on the public sympathy that the IMN movement has had all the while?
For me, I think it depends on the state of Nigerians what they choose to believe. Okay. Because these days, because of the level of cynicism in that place, we choose to believe what panders to our own narrow narratives. I mean, if we were to face it dispassionately, we know the things that are necessary. When we then begin to pander to one sentiment or another, then we can choose to travel any route we travel.
All right. Dr. Adediji, thank you very much for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right.